And let's get going. Hi, this is Steve Hodgden. It's December 12th, 2018, and this is Modern Assets Management's monthly discussion about what's going on in our world of notes and real estate, and hopefully share some experience that helps you and looking to build community. And you'll see on every slide that my email address is up at the top, and I'm looking to make friends, and this is a great way for me to get out and talk to dozens of people at a time and start to build a relationship. So we're going to talk about 278 Greenwell in Cincinnati, and Dion's going to ride along with me because this is all Dion's fault. We bought a non-performing note and wrote it through a very lengthy, hard-fought foreclosure process to an even harder fought REO. I'm going to cover some of the big lessons that I learned. Dion's going to help me decide what we could have done better. So this is a post-mortem. And then at the end, I'm going to show you your little bonus is a website that I found that I think is a remarkably easy way to look at the economy of a zip code that you're looking to buy a rental or invest in. It's put out in graphic format, and it's just it's another, every now and then something knocks me over, and this was one of those things. So anyway, so on to Greenwell. This was an update that came in as the forced eviction was taking place. This came from the people on the ground through the REO folks, and it says, "This is one of the most violent setouts that I or the bailiff has ever seen. Dennis, who is the borrower, ended up lying to the cop the night before the setout, telling him that he was already out. We showed up with our largest crew ever and worked with the bailiff and enforcement officer for Delhi Township. The bailiff did a good job keeping things from getting violent, as Dennis's brother was very upset and talked about guns and shooting people. Shockingly, they had their young kids there. The bailiff had our crew move about one half of the garage into the driveway so that Dennis was no longer permitted access to the home. Dennis asked several times for access, which I denied. Once the crap was in the driveway, the neighbors came out and started to complain because they were having people over for the holiday. The enforcement officer agreed, neighbors, and asked that everything be cleaned up for the weekend. One officer tells us to move it out, the other officer tells us to move it in, so we did both. The bailiff agreed that it was going to get violent when he left, so we placed everything in the driveway, resecured the house. We left Dennis to load all of the crap, and I do mean it was crap. We came back the next morning, 75% was still in the driveway. We moved all that back inside. We then cut the grass so the neighbors understood we were keeping our end of the promise. Tuesday morning, took 2 more loads of miscellaneous to the dump. I imagine we have a couple more days to have the house cleared. Clean-out bill is going to come in at $5,300 and will be done by Saturday. I was told it was 6 full debris boxes. We had a borrower who had a lengthy history of fights with the world and was a hoarder. In a previous walkthrough, loaded weapons were discovered in the house. We were helping him get stuff out before this day. So that was the end, nearly the end of the story. That was taking possession.
Yeah. 1,400 square feet.
Yes.
Thereabouts. Yeah.
Tiny little house, filled 3/4 of the way up the walls in some rooms. Classic, little alleyways to walk through. Borrower. We'll get into the borrower a little bit. I have a certain amount of empathy or sympathy for him, but it was something. So where we started. We had a property with a BPO of $124,000. We had an unpaid balance of $115,000, and Dion negotiated a purchase price from CMAX of $77,500. The borrower, again, has been in residence since 1995, I believe, and this note was a refinance loan modification done in 2004, I think, 2004 or 2006. Had been making spotty payments. Prior note owners had tried multiple attempts at foreclosure and ran into the same sort of stuff that we did. There were multiple bankruptcies, more than two. Borrower, after his wife left him, was the sole resident. She divorced him in the middle of all of this. He's a disabled vet, retired IRS agent, and it's a nice house in a nice neighborhood. And that was what was really appealing to me, because I own a lot of little mortgages on not nice houses in not nice neighborhoods. So this for me was a step up. We had the typical exits, walk through a foreclosure, then turn it into a rental or sell it. I made multiple attempts, both through the loan servicer, through the attorney, and reaching out directly to Dennis, I'll leave his last name out, to try to find some kind of loan modification. And my best offer to him was half price and make half payments, and I'd be okay. And he refused to do that. We talked about a deed in lieu, a little bit of cash for keys, and at that point, we became the enemy, and there was no turning back. He was camping. He was not going to pay, and he was going to stay there as long as he could. We'll get into the damage that he did in a little bit, but Dion, you want to jump in here for a sec and tell me what you remember about this when we came in? You know,
yeah.
Why was this a good deal?
I opened the file and reread it while you were talking. So just a couple other things that we were also stepping into an insurance claim that had come about to the tune $6,000 and change. And so as we were stepping into this, and I can show the payment history here on my screen in a second here. Let me do this. As I think you articulated well, we thought that there were some exits. Oh, let's see. Oh, I can't share if you're sharing.
Yeah. So let's just be succinct about the payment schedule. There appeared to be hope that he could be converted back into being a payer. He was making noise like that in the collection notes.
Well, when we came in, I can just read it. So we came in, and he had a rolling delinquency going back 150 days. He caught that up, and when we bid, he was current. When we purchased, he was headed towards delinquency again. But that had been his. I'd really like to show this graph. It's really pretty, but we knew the spotty nature that we were getting into, and I think the backdrop there as well was he had seemed to have exhausted his bankruptcy supplies, and we were aware that we were stepping into more than likely a foreclosure scenario, but we could be nice to him, right? So I think that's really it. I don't think there was too much more.
All right, so let's jump ahead. I've got your pretty picture in the background. We'll pop that up a little later if we have time. Okay. I'm working today. I should have announced we're going to be off this call in an hour. No matter what, it's my new goal. So, and what was the bottom line? When it was all in, we were at this for, I think, 17 months. My expenses, including purchase, were $101,464. My net at the REO sale, which was actually not sold to an investor, but sold to a couple that was going to repair the home and live in it. My net was $101.63. So I lost $401, but came away with a great story to tell. The The borrower, in the midst of all of this, the borrower lost his electric, and in the winter, that meant that his sump pump wasn't working. And he notified us through, I think I was through an attorney contact for payment, that we really ought to do something about the flood in his basement. And so we said thanks. But at that point, he had an extension cord going to the neighbor's house, and that was how how he was living. We didn't understand the damage that was in there. I'm going to quick open up a spreadsheet in a second here, but let me back up from here and switch screens.
So while you do that, Steve, I pulled up our bidding directions. So for this particular loan, the connotation was small amount of equity at 91% loan to value. Foreclosure was started in August, and we projected 14 months. Bid went out the door at 60% of BPO. And we thought we had both potentially a cash flow opportunity there or foreclosure. We had some concerns about bids not being disposed, and that's really it. So we went. This was probably a little strong for Ohio, but I think we were there because he had exhausted his bankruptcies, and it looked like there was potentially some spotty pay.
Right.
So I think there's probably a little bit of a premium in there. We treated it a little bit more with cash flow because when we were bidding, the loan had been flowing currently. There had been some delinquencies trailing back a year, but he'd always brought it current. So he looked more like a slow payer than he did a imminent default.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So this is a dump out of our QuickBooks file, and I just want to run through where we started back in February of 17, and we started with 4 months later. I've got a hefty bill from Gerner and Kearns for to start the foreclosure. I then get another bill from Gerner and Kearns, and then along the way we realized that we're in default on our taxes. And we pay $7,000 in taxes. And at this point, money's starting to go out, right? I'm paying water bills. We get back some money from our deposit with the bailiff. We move forward, and then I get a clean out bill. I'm still paying water. I get a clean out bill for this. I get this $5,600 bill is for tearing out all of the moldy drywall in the basement and getting the carpet torn out and getting it ready to go. And last little bill came in beginning of the week for the final clean out. I'll go back to my little pitch so we can get through this. Let me go here. This is the house.
With a dark cloud over it.
Yeah. But it was a smaller house in a neighborhood of larger houses in a good school district, and it was at the time. It was well maintained. It was, the exterior at any rate was well maintained. So here's another view. And I'm thinking I've got an asset, and it might be okay. I wanted you to see that, and I'll go back and finish the story here. So what did I learn as I went through and trying to figure out how I wasn't looking to make $100,000 in this. I was looking for a high teens, mid-teens return, and knew there was going to be some work. There were and the file was at FCI, and it had been there a long time. There were 159 pages in their document file. This was a long collection matter. If I had read the collection history a little better, I would have realized that my 30 years of collection experience was no match for this guy. He was, like you said, he was current at the moment, but he had this history of going 90, going 120, climbing back out, going back in, coming back out. And then one of the adages that I've tried to remember is that the inside of the house always looks like the mortgage. If the borrower isn't taking care of his obligation, he's not taking care of the rest of his life, including where he lives. When I confirmed that there were taxes due, and we knew that there were taxes coming in, I didn't take into account that, oh, I was going to be paying taxes for a year and a half. And Ohio is, for those of us that aren't in Ohio, Ohio is stiff. Ohio's 3% and change. So that was, I paid, I don't know, $10,000 in taxes along the way on this, maybe, so those were, so time killed this deal as time kills many deals, so the next time, we'd have to budget more of a what if kind of thing. I could have leaned on the attorney more than I did. I could have pushed for more contact. I could have, when I would contact the borrower, I'd coordinate with them that I was going to do that. I don't recommend that passive investors get into the debt collection business. I've been doing it my whole life, so I'm okay calling somebody up. I'm not gonna unknowingly walk into some sort of violation. A little more cash for keys may have worked. At the very end, he was trying to hold us up for some money, and at that point, I didn't trust him I didn't trust him at all. He was just looking for a couple of grand, and he was going to camp just like he had been. The bills that came in, it was $11,000 in cleanup and debris hauling. I'm pretty sure that I could have done that cheaper. I believe that when you have a California address and you're talking to a one-off Midwest trades person or service provider, there's a markup for being from California. So now the guy in Indiana is chuckling. We pay to live here, and I've had that happen in others. It's pushes me back to making sure that I stay in markets where I have people on the ground that are either part of a deal as a partner, or they're part of a community that we've done some work with before. And so, I have Jim pop me. Yeah.
Jim's on there.
Do you mind if I jump in real quick?
Jump in.
One trick I've learned, because I deal out of state as well. One trick I do is I do a Google Voice number that's the area code of wherever that project is, and that way when I call them, it pops up as though I'm local. And that's surprisingly worked. Typically it'll be, somewhere that I'm already at, or I've got a family member there, or used to live there, or whatever the case may be. So if they start really questioning, like, oh, where you live or where you're from, then I can actually rattle off a couple things to where it doesn't look totally suspect. But that's the way I've gotten around that California markup, is by use a Google Voice number with that area code.
Okay. Right, you're talking about like on the bid, right? We're not talking about servicing or collection.
Yeah. I'm not talking about face-to-face meetings. I'm just talking about if you're dealing with out-of-state contractors who are going to see a 4 and 5 number pop up and figure that you're California. That's a trick around it that I found that works pretty well.
Yeah, and I'd go along with that. I thought you were heading down spoofing on phone calls to borrowers, and
No.
okay,
Yeah, I was.
and I can do a class on how you do that because there's a way, but it's not the let me just go grab a burner phone. So
All right, thanks.
Nice. Okay, so that was the end of my show. That was the stuff. Dion, you still have, you want to, do we, I know it's a really pretty picture that you made for the show, The Payment Stream, and I looked at it, I looked at it earlier.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna take a second, switch topics, but ask if there's anybody who's got specific questions or issues with foreclosures or REO pricing or note pricing that we want to get out now before I jump into something else. So you can either pop into the chat box, or you can raise your hand or unmute your mic and say hello. So, all right. There's still time later. We're not done yet. So we got this multicolored screen. Anybody see this?
Yes.
Okay.
We've got a question.
Yeah. Oh, we do. What do we got?
How do you think you could have streamlined foreclosure process for Ohio? It's a little bit of a counterintuitive idea, right? I mean, the foreclosure process is judicial. It's gonna go through its judicial path, right? The borrower gets his day in court. It took some time. All in all, when did the sale take place, Steve?
The sale of the us getting back.
Yeah,
back to us was 3 months ago.
3 months. So we got in January, and we're out 18 months, right? So the bid workup, we were projecting 14, so we overextended by 4 months. But the big elephant in the room here, as it always is with non-performers, quite frankly, is you get inside and you start racking up bills with repair and maintenance and trash out was obviously a big bill here. That's not typical. And judging from the outside of the property, and this is how you get burned. It's not our first video that we talked about getting burned. But from the outside, you look like you have some pride of ownership, and then when you get inside, you get proven wrong. And so you'd like to. Hindsight is always easier. It's easy for us to sit here now and say we should have been more conservative and done some stuff. But at the same point in time, when you're in the market and you're trying to win that bid, you still have to deliver something that the seller's willing to transact on, right? So if you get too conservative, you just don't buy. And that's okay. You don't have to buy everything you see. But, such is the nature of the market. Does that answer your question, Brian?
Yeah, it does. Thanks, Dion.
So it's some of these work, some of these don't. I've had a couple that have gone down this path a couple of times, and it seems that if I had centralized a little more, had a little team, was in the business of buying foreclosures to make rentals, this would be a great rental. This would have been a great rental. It would have been $1,200 a month on a basis of $100,000. Maybe I had to put maybe I'd put 30 in to remodel it. So 130 with a $1,200 a month. I got a 10% gross rent multiplier, and life's good. Life's good. I could have refied out a chunk of my money and would have been fine. But I can't manage one property in Cincinnati. I'm not important to a property manager there. If I had 5, well, maybe. So this is something that came across my desk. There's a website called Visual Capitalist, and they source information from lots of places. This is They call this the geography of America's distressed communities, and this is where we're playing. We're playing in these neighborhoods. So, Dion, you off the top of your head, you know a Gary zip code?
46402.
46402. I'm thinking about becoming an investor in Gary, Indiana.
Come on up. We got a lot of good stuff going on.
Yeah, yeah.
It looks like a Jackson Pollock.
Yeah, it does, right? And so let's see, somewhere.
Can you scoot, Steve? Can you scoot your? I don't know if it's like this for everybody else. Maybe it's, but can you scoot the screen up so we can see more of the map?
Let's try.
Scroll down. Are you scrolling the map up? Scroll the page.
Yeah. Hush. I'm getting there.
All right.
Whoops. Hang on. This is the.
We're all cheering for you.
Oh yeah, there we go.
There you go, buddy.
All right. I can probably even go. All right, this. All right, so here we are. We have this map, and the map. I said we were out here.
Gotcha.
Right, we're out here. There's Lake Michigan. You got Chicago over here. You're down here. You get into Gary, and you come in and expand. There's a link here that takes you up here to the Distressed Communities Index and on the Economic Innovation Group site, which is an interesting place to hang out. 46402. Which way there?
So that's about right.
Oh, there it is. All right. Okay. Can you see the box that popped up?
Yes.
Okay. So these are the economic distress indicators for Gary. All right. So 4 years ago, 4 years recent, population in the zip, minority share, density, the DCI score, the distress score on the scale of 1 to 100. That ain't so hot. And then you come down here and they look at things like education. Oops. They come down here and look at things like education, poverty rate, and then percentage of adults not working. Right? I was using bestplaces.net, and I was using another site that gave me some census data. But here you are, you're in Gary, you've got half the adults are out of work, you've got 30% vacancy, you've got a median income ratio to rent, I guess, at 30% probably. You have a significant drop in employment over a 4-year period. Change in establishments that's number of businesses, right? And here's their distress rank within the United States. And this is the number 1 tough zip code in the state.
You wanted a good example.
That's right, I did. So coming into Gary, I've got to come in as a fast velocity, buy it wholesale, sell it wholesale kind of deal, or I've got to be playing a cash flow game, knowing that I'm going to have lots of turnover. I'm going to have to look at being a Section 8 landlord. I'm going to have to run a business, not so much as a passive investor, unless I've got people on the ground that are those people, right? So they come down. This report goes into other stuff. I think it's what's attracted me. I've been doing stuff in Florida, Pensacola. Those of you who've been around for a little while, because I like that the population's improving. Some of the zip codes there where I've got property look like this. They're maybe not 50. They're 35, 40% unemployment. But I've got a rent multiplier that makes sense. I'm getting $650 a month on $50,000 property. But it's work.
It's an it's an interesting scale. If you can remove that and just show the scale at the bottom there, I think there's probably an interesting takeaway, right? So we're looking at literally one of the worst zones in the state of Indiana, right? So that's in the opportunity zone. It's a targeted census district for reinvestment. So it's the bottom. And some of the takeaway there is you'd expect to see those numbers, but you expect to see investors are the most likely purchasers in that market, right? It needs to be bought and redeveloped. But I think the takeaway here is if you look at that portion of the legend down on the bottom, right? So if you don't have boots on the ground, you probably don't want to be orange or red. That's sort of the way that start. Once you start to get to that peachy color and towards blue, you're probably safe being a little far away, but you really get into distress zones when you start talking orange and that dark maroon. And if you're there, that's where bad stuff happens. And if you don't have boots on the ground, then you're gonna struggle through getting it dispositioned. It's just going to be an uphill fight. And so that could be, this is the first time I've seen this map. I like this map. I'll have to play with it a little bit more too.
Yeah. So I think as the armchair investor sitting at home, breaking down a tape from Eddie Speed or somebody, you can use this to get a quick view. I read through the report and the stuff on the website where it came from, and there's some really interesting information about the two kinds of United States we have now, where we, the haves and the have-nots, and that there's, there doesn't. I came away from the report really thinking there's no saving the have-nots. So
was it Steve? Is it a free report, or did you buy it?
Oh no, it's free. This is remarkable.
Publishes from
it's remarkable how much free information was on this. This site publishes stuff a couple times a week. They have a very strong bent toward finances, both on the economy and also on individual finance. They've got a kind of a mission to make things better. So I encourage you to take a look at this. This was. I said this was something, and here, we're looking at Indiana. You start to get out here. This is all rural, and that was another big thing off of the ECI website, was that it's just if you live in the country, you're in a world of hurt financially. So even though here Chicago this is the economic center of that region, we still have, again, a very bifurcated world between the haves and the have-nots. So that was my that was my little jewel for coming in. Take a look at visualcapitalist.com. I've been a subscriber for a while, and it's helped me get a much larger view of what's going on. Nick's on the line. Nick, we can go look at all of our unsecured loans, and this is exactly what our issue is. It's when we wind up in red neighborhoods, or whatever this color is, we're in trouble. Because they don't have a way out. We're heavily invested in Houston these days, and that comes with a lot of delinquency. So those are my two topics. We'll open the floor for questions again. I'm excited that we're going to be done in 45 minutes.
I haven't talked a lot.
Yeah, that's true.
Nick hasn't said a word.
Why is that? Because Nick has gotten his head handed to him all day long today. It's just
been working on another fun foreclosure. So
that's right.
That one will be next month's story, actually.
Yeah, that's right.
But a project that anyone who's followed Steve for a little while will be very, very familiar with when the story comes back to the next chapter.
Yeah, and how excited I was 2 years ago when I jumped in on this. and how unexcited I am today. Next month it'll either be a tragedy or we've managed to pull it out of the fire. The high-end California market, specifically Los Angeles, in the last quarter, sales volume has decreased by 2/3, and we're seeing 15+% discounts on high-end property year over year. We're seeing days on market jump from 45, which it was at the very peaky top, to now getting out to 4 months in just a matter of months.
Yeah, I can give you some color on what some of the stuff we've got going on in the Midwest. We're a little unique. We haven't seen that, but it certainly is. We haven't seen that drastic of a drop, but you can feel it coming. We can feel it coming on the retail side. Underwriting's starting to get a lot slower. So for those folks that are fixing and flipping or buying and selling off the REO, approvals are getting tighter. Underwriting's getting tighter. Rates are inching up. You can feel it. You can feel it coming in. And I think it's just a matter of what geographies it hits first. But likely, more than likely, I think over the last couple of years, there's been a lot of speculation that you'd see some of the larger, higher priced MSAs get hit first. New York, LA, et cetera, et cetera.
Dion, is affordability an index that you track and you see a lot of magnitude in, like in California, where we're bouncing off the top of where we've ever seen?
Yeah, it definitely is, because there we still have we're still a little undersupplied, right? So I've seen a lot of there's a lot of building still going on. In the Midwest, we still have a lot of land available. And what seems to be happening is, it's become unaffordable to build lower income and middle income homes. You gotta really attack the upper middle class and upper wage caps to be able to sell a newly built home, or you're just getting a real small home, right? And so I think that is adding pressure in a lot of markets that you've seen some rapid growth, because there's been a lot of construction new starts. And this was some of the problem that we saw in 2005 and 6. We bought a large portfolio from Synovus Bank in Lehigh and Collier County, which is southeast Florida, or southwest Florida, I'm sorry. And they were all brand new homes, never lived in. And they were $250,000, retail price. And we came in at about $48,000 a door. And that was really driven by just overbuilding and hoping the absorption would come. So I do think watching income and watching absorption rates is pretty important. There's a lot of Indiana, Illinois is an interesting dichotomy, because we see a lot of flight from Illinois because of property tax and fiscal responsibility, and it's a little cheaper over in Indiana. So there's a lot of states that you can see that. You see some flight from central Indiana into Ohio. So depending on where you are, geography matters, and the flow of people matter. How that urban sprawl is taking place, how urban renewal is taking place. It helps to be informed about the market for sure. We are taking Q&A if you want to type something in, anybody. Or just scream at us. We got some more filler?
Just to your point, Dion, about land and availability to build, there's only thing really limiting us here in California is local government and regulation, and the really interesting opportunity that Steve and I've looked at over the past 2 years, because this has been unfortunately a repeating pattern of tragedy, is wildfire. And California just came off of the deadliest wildfire in U.S. history. And so it was like the number of structures that have burned, and to be able to maintain economic stability, they have to bring in construction at this incredible rate, or everybody has to go somewhere else, and that community never really rebuilds. It's very, very interesting to follow.
So we got a question. We got two questions, but that's Steve answering. All right, now we're blowing up. So Yasmin asked, "Where is a good market to invest?" Steve responded, "As they say, it depends what you're trying to achieve." And then we got, what interested you enough to bid on the Ohio note in the first place versus not bidding? Was it that it was a nice house? So let's go with the investing real quick, just to add some commentary there. So I think what Steve said is true, right? What are you trying to do, right? You can invest in like that, 46402. There's opportunity there. I mean, you can make the argument that if you're at the bottom, there's nowhere to go but up. The question is, do you know where the bottom is, right? There's innate risk in buying a loan because you don't get, the interior property inspection that you do when you make the loan. And so that's, there's a lot of burn there. And, and obviously when you get into judicial circumstances, there's some stuff that can come up that prolongs periods. But, again, for the Ohio loan, I don't think that was, it cost us 4 months, but in the scheme of things, I wouldn't say that's a crazy exorbitant amount of time. It still costs us money, make no bones about it. But I think the big elephants where the budget, we got blown out of the budget because of the excess legal fees, excess REO fees with trash out and repair, and that the budget was just blown out of the water. Ironically, the bid, we actually dispositioned it greater than the net proceeds in the bid, but we spent more money than we obviously budgeted too, right? So, and I think at some point in time in there, I think when one of those attorney invoices is when Steve just kind of was like, "Yep, the budget's gone."
Yeah.
I think I remember that conversation.
Yeah. Well, there were several. Yeah. So it's what do I want? I want stability. I want areas that are having migration, not population shrinking. I'm trying to fight my own little local battle, not the whole region's battle. I can't fight General Motors in Detroit. I can't do that. But can I build retirement housing in the South? Can I find affordable property, like Nick said about affordability? I can't afford to live here, and I live here. It's silly. I mean, it's silly. I'm standing in an $800,000 house that I think is worth $5. So that's it comes to what you think. One of the things is we know what we know, right? And we live where we live. So when we look at how people live elsewhere, we don't understand that. I've got a very nicely paying mortgage on a house that I paid $13,000 for. The entire house was $13,000, and I have a borrower in there on a short note paying $500 a month who is very happy to be there. And I can't understand his lifestyle. He can't understand mine, but we're both getting something out of it. So if you're in Gary and your family's in Gary, then you may stay in Gary. So if you can give somebody a better deal than what he's got, then then maybe you've got something. But yeah. I don't want to own one door. That's been when Dion and I got together, I had sold a shopping center that I had all my eggs in this one big basket. And I took that money and spread it all over the United States. We bought 28 notes in 13 states, primarily in red boxes, as you see on the map. And the mortgage pool was, I think, like an average like $35,000 $28,000, something like that.
Yeah.
And it's been cash flowing just fine. It's been cash flowing lovely. And it's had some foreclosures. So it's at that point when I did that, I wanted to diversify and I wanted all my bills paid, and it did that. And then my goals changed. Then my goals changed. Nick put up a link to a Redfin. Nick's
Jim
favorite.
had a great question. Yeah, did you see that?
Yeah. So population growth.
Didn't mean to interrupt you. You were on a roll, and I'll finish your stream of thought. It was a good one.
So I'll come back to Jim's FPI at the end. But yeah, talk about the Redfin data center. This is so beyond my ability. So Nick, touch on this for a sec.
Yeah. If you want to pull it up, Steve, it's pretty simple to use, but the data center is a Tableau dashboard driven by Redfin's astronomical data warehouse and the migration tool. So if you go about a third of the way down the page, Steve, you can take one of my favorites is San Francisco, where affordability is at the highest it's ever been, and is the highest in the U.S. Sorry, the level of unaffordability, the inverse. But
this chart
down a little more. I think it's probably the next section. There it is.
Migration.
So migration. So you can take your origin of San Francisco, and you can have your destination of all, and it'll give you the San Francisco or San Jose, or what you'll get is where they're all going, how many are going. So Seattle. So this is a perfect example that I used was the tech shift of the Bay Area where it's unaffordable to live, and I actually have family from the San Francisco Bay Area that have done this. Two separate family units, both cousins of mine from the Bay Area, went up to Seattle. Amazon's up there. One was in construction, but he was building Amazon's facility. Not a tech guy, but it all revolves around the economic activity happening up there. Mm-hmm. So we probably know people who've moved to Portland. I do know people who have moved to Austin and to Las Vegas from the Bay Area. But if you wanted to toggle on in and out of state, you can do that as well. But I don't know if Metropolitan of Gary, Indiana is on there, but the flow, whether the flow is in or out, is very telling, as Steve was saying. And this is just the coolest tool.
Yep. And this is, well, what's the staying chart? And this is some people living in Chicago, looking in Chicago, 90%. Right? So that's interesting. You can look that way too. So this is more great stuff. So people,
it's free, Jim.
Yeah.
That's a free site from Redfin. Yeah.
So go to redfin.com/blog or type in a Google search Redfin Data Center. And it is remarkable what you can get, what you can download. We've got a project in the incubator of doing mass mailing, and we're using Redfin data to try to establish wholesale values of properties. And we're going to be dropping that. They're going to be dropping 5,000 letters, and we're late to doing it because we're still still trying to learn. We're going to drop 5,000 letters in the Pensacola area and see if we can stir up 50 deals. So, what else is you got your new construction versus existing.
No, I think, it's just to kind of tie this back into how the tangent sort of started, right?
Yeah.
Ultimately, there's no golden nugget, right? Nick may have good turnout in one geolocation, Steve another, myself another, right? And we would expect that because these are not homogeneous assets. So it's impractical for us to say, where's the one place that I have the least amount of risk? That's going to depend on your risk diversity, right? So are you comfortable in, more distressed neighborhoods? Are you used to dealing with those types of problems? Those are the types of problems where you have, squatters, vandalism, and, downward pressure on values. There's economic pressure. Or do you need to be a little bit more in, median value? And a lot of that for, some of the street level investors that we chat with, it tends to be that, there's an economic push there, right? So you're not investing enough to buy, $1 million homes in LA, but you can get, maybe some, nicer homes in the Midwest or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then, and it goes down from there. And oftentimes, I think in the three of our commentary and the commentaries, we've talked about being careful that you don't race to the bottom, because when you race to the bottom, you end up in the neighborhood that costs the most. And that's really, if you're new, it's not really where you want to be, right? I mean, even this is experienced guys, and we're sharing. We all make mistakes. You don't win them all. We're sharing these with you as examples of. You can do everything you think you did right, and you can still end up with a goose egg.
Yeah. But again, this if I had an exit strategy where I wanted to be a landlord in Cincinnati, it would have been, it would have been great. Can
we explore that for 1 second, Steve? Because I think that's an interesting idea too. So, why not convert it and recapture your capital? Why drive the sale and realize the loss?
Right.
In your mind, what went through your mind saying, why don't I get some cash flow, or why don't I just realize this loss now?
If it cost me $11,000 to get the junk hauled out, it was going to cost me a lot more to put a new kitchen and flooring in. So I had no control. But if I was going to have 5, 10, if Cincinnati was going to be my town, then if I didn't find things in the REO market that fit, making my own REOs by buying notes is a perfectly good way to do that. You also get tired of things, right? I sold that. I exited that shopping center at $5.2 million. Somebody gave me $5.2 million, and I bet that shopping center is worth 6.5 now. But I was tired of it. I had fought for 10 years, and that was as good as I could do. So that's part of it is timing. There's, not everybody sells on price. Not everybody, so you look for asynchronous anomalies, and that's where deals can get made. Like I said, if I was in Ohio, or if I had people in Ohio, I put it up on Bigger Pockets just to see what people thought. I got half a dozen inquiries right away, people driving by. It's an active investor marketplace there. But I don't own a pickup truck. I don't own a hammer. That's not for me. Give me a piece of a mobile home park. Give me a wholesale deal to flip. Give me paper. Give me paper. I have a calculator. I can use a calculator way better than I can use power tools.
That's right. Little risk of getting hurt.
Yeah. Well, and I guess that's when to new folks is, what's your superpower? What are you good at, and how do you lever that? How do you lever that? How do you lever what I'm good at?
Turning hard assets into paper, I think.
I dig seller finance deals. I love the idea of people paying rent to eventually own where they're staying. I think that helps people, and that makes me feel good. And the margins better than me being a landlord, because I'm not having to fix it and hire a property manager in the middle of the night. I owned a property management business for 2 years. It was the worst job I ever had, and I owned a collection agency for 22 years. Okay. So I am not a good property manager. Yeah. So anyway, that was a rant. So anyway, we're busting up against our hour. Last chance for a question. I was kidding at the beginning when I said Dion cost me money. Dion did not. Like he said, I made the decision to exit, and we had better use for the $100,000. Nick hasn't spent it yet, but it's going out the door any minute now.
Right in time for Christmas.
Yeah.
And there's the bell.
And there's the bell. We're going to put this up on the YouTube channel. It's you can find it under my name, Steve Hodgdon, Hodgdon. There's, I think, 15 of them up there now. You guys as a universe, the couple of hundred people that I invite, and the dozen or so that show up, I sure want you to be more participative. Ask, use an alias, ask dumb questions, because I've, as Nick's known me for 10 years and Dion's known me for 3 now. I'll make some really stupid choices. So better you learn from me than go learn on your own.
Right.
All right.
Stay tuned. We're gonna have some good stuff to talk about here in Q1. So it gets more exciting.
Yep. We're taking all this knowledge and applying it, and therefore it's not wasted knowledge. Wisdom comes from mistakes. So, all right. Appreciate you guys calling in. Nice to see you, Ryan. I still owe you coffee or lunch. I see Bettina's out there. Hi, Bettina. Good to see Jim on there. All right.
Yeah, there's a lot of familiar names. Yeah. Shout out to all you folks.
Yep.
Merry Christmas. Happy holidays.
All right. Merry Christmas. See you guys in January. All right. Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys.
So.